Hey, everybody. It is Diane Lee. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director here at ISI. Thanks so much for tuning in to our live broadcast on LinkedIn. Two great guests today. We've got Josh DeFlorio, who is the Chief Resilience and Sustainability Guru at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. We also have Anthony Kane, our President and CEO, and we have a really good discussion today on what the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is doing, how they're using Envision and incorporating it into their work. So a lot to unpack. Of course, the first question always goes to our special guest, Josh. It's going to be a very broad question, and this one is all about sustainability. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Tell us what your guys' commitment is, how Envision is kind of evolved for you guys. Big, long question, but tell us all about it.
Sure. So first of all, great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. For those of you who are watching this in retrospect, it is 5 days before the election. It is a rainy day, less than fully inspiring. So I'm glad that you could join us today, take our mind off of the election and save me from refreshing 538 compulsively. So I appreciate that.
Thumbs up here.
When it comes to the more important stuff, the Port Authority's commitment to sustainability, it all starts with the policy, right? So we as staff members are committed to the general ideas of sustainability, certainly, but that doesn't get us very far without formal policy commitment, without executive level buy-in. So since 1993, the Port Authority has had an environmental sustainability policy, and that policy was actually updated in 2008. That's the policy that we have substantively intact today. And that policy embraces all facets of sustainability, makes specific commitments to greenhouse gas mitigation, to reducing our impacts on global climate change, and to responding to the impacts of climate change as well, meaning protecting our facilities and protecting them in an environmentally sustainability manner as well. In 2018, the agency adopted the Paris Accord, so we were the first transportation agency in the United States to say we're still in. So we've made the interim commitments in line with the Paris Agreement. We've always had, or I should say since 2008, seems like always, a commitment to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050. So that underpins everything that we do at the Port Authority. What I do specifically is more on the design, project delivery, and construction side. So we're delivering the Port Authority's capital plan. Obviously, due to COVID, that capital plan is a bit in flux at this point. But if you were to look at our capital plan last year in normal times, it's a $37 billion capital plan. It covers transportation assets from aviation, tunnels, bridges, and terminals, the path urban rail system. Ports, obviously, you can't have a port authority without a port complex, and we're the United States' second largest at this point, as well as our real estate assets at World Trade Center and other sites throughout the greater New York and New Jersey region. So we have a big capital plan, we make a big impact on the region, and we have a lot of buying power within the region. It's important for us to have sustainability guidelines and standards that are in alignment and spiritually in sync with our policy objectives as well. And that's what we do fundamentally. We create these guidelines, we issue them, and then we ensure that, of course, that they're updated and that that our staff is well versed with them, that folks adhere to them. So we really make sure that we're following through on our commitment in a very concrete way, which is, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We are investing in sustainability. We are integrating it in a very fundamental fashion, major construction projects that we're funding through that large capital plan across the region.
Awesome. I think Anthony is itching to ask you about those specific guidelines and those standards, aren't you, Anthony?
Absolutely.
I can see you right now going, let me in there.
Well, I really love, I love getting on to talk to Josh just because I really like Josh, but also to talk with the Port Authority. As Josh mentioned, their commitment is longstanding to sustainability. So the story I could tell is about how when, the Port Authority's original sustainability guidelines predate Envision, for those who don't know. So they've been working on this a very long time. And when we came around to developing Envision, we actually worked with the Port Authority and really were inspired by a lot of their sustainability guidelines when we created Envision. So many of the Port Authority's original sustainability guidelines are actually in Envision in some way or another. And now what's really exciting is, as the Port Authority has gone through the exercise of updating and revising their guidelines, now they're referencing Envision again.
Wow.
So
yeah, the student has become the master.
So that was, I thought maybe Josh could talk just a little bit about that exercise that they're going through to update those sustainability guidelines and, the value that they're seeing in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll start with the genesis of those sustainable infrastructure guidelines. Full disclosure, I've been with the agency just about 5 years. I'm about 3 weeks away from my 5-year anniversary.
Congrats.
So this all preceded me. So credit is due to the folks who preceded me and to the staff that I have who helps us implement these guidelines successfully every day. But our sustainable infrastructure guidelines came out in 2011, and on March 23rd of 2011 specifically. For 4 years prior, we had what we called sustainable design guidelines, but they were very much oriented to buildings. They were focused roughly on an early version 2.1 of the LEED system. And of course, given the assets that we own and manage and that we construct, things like airports, bridges, you name it, those guidelines didn't apply well to many of the assets that we were seeing in our capital plan. So we, I think, looked around. Once again, I'm kind of constructing things based on eyewitness accounts at the time. I wasn't there, but we looked around for systems that might exist in the marketplace, third-party system, much like LEED was at the time, and determined that we would probably have to go our own way in order to develop a standard that met our needs. So we did that. It was a 2-year deliberative process. We delivered the guidelines in 2011, and they've served well, I think. They're getting a little long in the tooth now, but I don't want to cast aspersion on the value of those early guidelines. We are now, however, of course, almost 10 years on, and the industry has moved on, and those guidelines have not. So we're virtually 10 years out from those guidelines, and we're finding that they're no longer pushing the envelope. They're no longer really the practice leading standard that we set out to develop. And systems, of course, like Envision, that learned from our original guidelines and have continued to grow and evolve, and are dynamic systems. And it's Envision's, it's ISI's mission to ensure that that standard is updated from time to time as the industry shifted. We've realized that it makes a whole lot more sense to hitch our wagon to a technical standard that others and a much broader community of practitioners is committed to updating and ensuring is state of the practice, is really continuing to push the envelope. So our current initiative, which we're really just about 2 weeks away from completing, is to retire the legacy SIG guidelines, what we call SIG Sustainable Infrastructure Guidelines. They'll stick around for projects that are already most of the way through the process, but in all likelihood, they'll be fully retired by the time we get to 2022. Instead, what we're doing, and this is the route that we've taken with our sustainable building guidelines as well, is we're adopting the Envision system. We're adopting a third-party rating system as our technical criteria. And then for application criteria, basically how we choose to apply the technical criteria in the context of any specific project or program remains up to us. This also, of course, you guys have done a great job, especially over the last couple of years, particularly since you introduced the continuing education requirement in putting out materials to help folks stay abreast of the state of the practice, to keep learning, to keep evolving in their professional lives. And this is something that our homegrown system, of course, doesn't offer. The only way to figure out what's entailed by the guidelines is to read the 150-page manual, which many people don't want to do. Imagine that.
Right.
A lot of people don't have the time and energy to do that. So this helps ensure that we have a state of the practice standard, and it also ensures that we have a much broader community of practitioners who are ready to implement it, who understand it, and that we have a pipeline to ensure that other key staff, particularly within the engineering department of the Port Authority, but much broader than that in our client departments as well, have access to the standard, our ENVSPs where possible, and that we are able to cultivate a sort of network and a community within the Port Authority of people who believe in the importance of sustainable infrastructure and who have some orientation and expertise in the topic.
Hey,
So,
I'm curious, Anthony, this is for you. And actually, you could answer it too, Josh. Based on what you see here and what he's talking about as a model, is this something that you think many other communities or port authorities or how do you feel about their embracing that kind of a model, the way that they've done it and implemented it?
Absolutely. And, I really appreciate Josh's comments because it speaks to really the heart of why ISI exists. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We exist for the public good. It's not about us or our system. We're trying to provide tools and resources to help everybody just move the needle a little bit more, push that needle a little forward. So I think, as Josh points out, what we try to do as an organization is identify those areas in the industry where, for sustainable development, collective action, consensus, common cause, shared resources are the most efficient ways to go, and then to provide those resources in a shared way that's a fraction of the cost of each of us trying to develop our own systems and our own resources. And also, as Josh pointed out, it's not to say to replace anything or to override anything, but to provide those shared resources when it makes sense to have shared resources. And as the Port Authority has done, then allow them to customize them. Everyone's going to be different. Mm-hmm. They can take what's valuable out of Envision, they can customize it to how they want to do. Everyone's going to do things a little bit differently, but we can get you 80% of the way there. You don't have to start from scratch every single time. So I think that's exactly what we'd like to do. And I think it is replicable all over.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was going to say, Anthony, you sort of alluded to other systems out there, and although our technical criteria are oriented to the Envision system, the core of our new system is Envision. There are other credible systems out there, and they meet, needs for certain specialty project types. For example, just to give a shout out to the Waterfront Alliance folks and the Wedge system. We have a couple of credits from Wedge. Obviously, it's the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. If you look at our assets, many of them are coastal in nature, they're shoreline, and that's a particular strength of the Wedge system. So we offer those credits as innovation credits within our own system. We make specific references to them because we feel that they help provide a more holistic pathway to achieving our sustainability objectives for certain project types. So there's room. It's a big tent, right? Yeah. Sustainability and sustainable infrastructure. And Envision, I think, and ISI have set up a model that allows us to take as much from that system and from that network of professionals as we need, and then allows us to innovate and customize and to take the best of other systems as needed. So the flexibility and I think the general spirit of collaboration that ISI, has embodied has been really important, and it was a key reason why we chose to swerve in the direction of ISI and Envision when developing the update for our sustainable infrastructure guidelines.
Absolutely. Boy, you love hearing that, don't you, Anthony?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. We're here to put tools in the tool belt, right? So that the people on the front lines have all the resources that they can use. And yeah, there's going to be other tools and resources, right? We're just trying to provide the most comprehensive set of resources and tools that we can.
Hey, Josh, I'm curious about some of the projects that you guys have worked on that you've used Envision on, especially I think you've had a couple projects even verified, right?
We have indeed. And, Anthony, we were on a webinar together held by AIA New York earlier this year, sometime in July, I believe. And I think at the time you had $25 billion worth of Envision verified projects. And I did a little back of the napkin math and determined that our two projects were about 25% of that value. And this is, I guess, the advantage of having multi-billion-dollar projects in your portfolio. But those two projects are the Bayonne Bridge Navigational Clearance Project, also called Raise the Roadway. And the quick background there is that Bayonne Bridge is one of the four bridges. All of the bridges are interstate bridges between New York and New Jersey. One of the four bridges in our portfolio, it's a legacy 1931 Othmar Amman steel arch bridge. and it was over. Oh yeah, there it is. And you can see it in perspective. This is actually in its raised configuration. We took the roadway deck, the original roadway deck, and you can actually see it there to the left and right. And we raised it, I think, 75 feet above the previous level, and that was to allow the passage of these post-Panamax vessels. Otherwise, we were constraining the vessel size at 4 of our 5 largest port facilities. So that was something on the order of a $1.3 billion project.
Wow.
We actually brought it through our own system, the legacy SIG system, and this was earlier in the, God, it seems weird to say this, but earlier in the last decade, when the project planning, design, and construction took place. I think they completed construction entirely in early 2019. But as Envision rose and got traction as a national third-party system, our staff decided that it would be interesting to see how it fared under the Envision version 2 system. And so effectively, we retroactively put it into the system to see how it would do. It got a silver award. We thought it could probably have edged up to gold, but the project was done. The opportunities actually to further enhance sustainability were negligible. So we basically took the initial level of verification offered to us, but it was a really useful exercise, and it actually gave us a lot of confidence in moving in the direction of aligning our system with Envision, that that we could make a good go of it. The other project, which is it's just due to the complicated ownership structures at Port Authority. So this is LaGuardia Terminal B. This was actually the project of a PPP, public-private partnership called LaGuardia Gateway Partners. Of course, they worked with us, and we actually put in their requirements and provisions for work that they meet the Legacy Sustainable Infrastructure Guideline standard. They proposed Envision version 3 actually as a alternative compliance pathway for our own guidelines. And we elected to accept that. And this is a design and then post-construction certification. They have received their design, or I should say verification. They've received their verification at the Envision Platinum level for the design submission. A couple years from now, they're going to submit the post-construction submission as well. But that was a great team to work with. They really pushed the envelope. Like I said, they were responding to a requirement, so we'd like to think that we got them halfway there. But then it was their decision to move forward with a formal verification, and obviously they did quite well. I think they were, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were the first platinum project to be verified under version 3 even.
Absolutely, yeah, that's correct.
So we're very proud of them, and very proud to have 2 very large Envision verified projects within the Port Authority portfolio. There will be more in the near future.
Nice. And you kind of, you recommend it for large projects. I mean, within your group, right? You think it's pretty valuable, and you recommend it to others for these large projects. Why is that? That's the case, right?
It makes a lot of sense for large projects, what we typically call redevelopment projects or major system enhancing projects. And it tends to be because they're very, they're comprehensive scopes of work, particularly for a multi-billion-dollar project. You are going into a pre-planning exercise. You're making a business case. You're making a plan. There's a lot of community engagement. There's often an environmental impact statement. So there is, Envision, I think, as you would say yourselves, is well oriented to asking the question, is this the right project? And for projects that, really require a lot of time, consideration, deliberation, public outreach, and, are really, truly comprehensive full scopes of work, it makes a lot of sense to use the Envision system. So we've integrated those into requirements and provisions for work for several, I'm not going to name names at this point in time, but there are several large multi-billion-dollar redevelopment projects that must meet at least an Envision Gold standard in order to be compliant with the Port Authority's criteria. The delivery dates on those, of course, are all in flux due to COVID.
Yeah.
But
everything is in flux due to COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't want to overpromise on schedule, but we're literally poised, let's say, over the next 5 to maybe 7 years to deliver well over $10 billion in Envision verified projects throughout the Port Authority portfolio. And that is completely aside from, let's say, the normal run-of-the-mill capital plan, your substations, your runway rehabilitations, your minor bridges, those sorts of things, which, now will be, I should say that I haven't been explicit about this, but we've added alternate verification tracks under the new system. So if a project proponent wants to go forward and get the Envision verification directly from ISI, we certainly encourage that and accept it. For smaller projects and for projects particularly that aren't what I would call full scope projects, we'll do the verification in-house. But one way or the other, we will have Envision, or let's say roughly Envision equivalent projects coming out of our pipeline pretty much exclusively for our infrastructure portfolio starting in 2021.
Ah, exciting. Yeah, we'd love to hear that. Makes our day. So we have a couple people who are watching. So if you are watching, by the way, go ahead and put up where you're from. Let us know. Get a shout out. We've got Victoria who put something on the screen that she says, thanks, Josh. She appreciates this model of implementation. And yeah, I think a lot of people that we hear from want to see how other agencies have done it and how they've incorporated it, and give so that they can go back and talk to their folks and say, look at how they're doing it. Because we're running out of time. We gotta really meet those goals that have been set for 2050 and such.
And of course, like I don't want to say that the Port Authority has, I think, very strong commitment to these issues. I think we're ahead of the wave, but we're not unique in this. There are certainly other examples of large public agencies that have applied Envision programmatically and got there first. Folks in LA have done a great job. Our own friends over at New York City DEP has adopted Envision programmatically as well. The New York City Department of Design and Construction has a cadre of well over 100 ENVSPs. We're still trying to hit 50 by the end of the year. It's not a contest, as everyone says. But there's a nice community of large public agencies, infrastructure agencies, not just transportation, obviously, water, wastewater, and much broader than that, who have made a commitment to moving in the direction of Envision and applying it programmatically across their major capital portfolios. So, definitely glad to provide an example and to help reinforce the message. But, look more broadly, whatever sector you're in, there's probably an example of a practice leader who, even if they haven't adopted Envision programmatically, they're probably still working with the system, using the system for individual verification. So there's a lot of precedent out there.
Well, that's Josh. I might ask a quick question then, because I know there's a lot of people, across the world, certainly across the U.S. and Canada, where they're passionate about sustainability, but they're sort of on their own to some extent. They might be fighting to get that one project, that one pilot project, and it's a heavy lift. I wonder if you can speak to the efficiencies that come from your experience being in New York, not only with the Port Authority with longstanding commitments to sustainability, but as you mentioned, the other agencies within New York that are also using Envision and have strong commitments to sustainability. Maybe just to describe for people kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, that they're pushing the ball uphill right now, but there comes a point where you see the value in a broader adoption of sustainability principles.
Yeah, I would say generally the world is moving in that direction in fits and starts. And if you kind of feel like you're alone in your corner of the world and you're the only one who cares about these issues, there is a virtual community of practitioners, at least. Whatever your sector is, obviously Envision for infrastructure, LEED for the built environment, but it goes much broader than that. So definitely connect in. American Society of Civil Engineers, I think, is giving this another look and is obviously kind of a parent of ISI as well, but they're spending more time and resources, looking at how they integrate these into the standards that everyone under the sun uses. So the community is evolving in that direction. It's not necessarily a linear evolution, but it is happening. And so there's some natural upward pressure on everyone as the standards tighten. as we start to embrace. Sorry, you probably hear my 2-year-old in the background there, who probably has an opinion on this, but maybe to segue, that's why all this work is very important.
Yes, exactly.
Because he will be certainly the beneficiary of my work in this region and the work of my fellow practitioners across the globe, even if he doesn't appreciate it at the very moment. But where was I before my train of thought was derailed? So anyway, this is something I think that not just this unique community of practice is pushing for. First of all, the community of practice is expanding by the moment, but also the more traditional, the more state and conservative standard setting organizations are also giving this a serious look. They are making changes. Change is slow, but the world is evolving in this direction. Being ahead of the curve will be an advantage. You'll look like a genius in 5 or 10 years, trust me, and you'll know that you're doing good work in the meantime. So I think the other thing I would say is that Envision helps you, and other sustainability rating systems for that matter, others that come from seasoned communities of practitioners that where they spend a long time really deliberating on these standards and the criteria that go into them. They help you make a business case as well. They help you quantify contributions to sustainability. They help you ask mindful questions in the design process that can save you costs, whether upfront or through the life cycle. So especially in this time where resources are constrained, where budgets are drying up, this is especially the time to embrace sustainability, because there's not just an environmental sustainability, there is a financial sustainability argument that we all need to consider. And like I said, a third-party rating system really helps focus not just design practitioners, but planners and the financial folks on what truly matters, where the impacts are, where the expenditures are most impactful, and where investments in sustainability can actually save you money, whether upfront and in the long run. So however you need to make the argument, make it, because there are several different tacks you can take, and all of them are true, and all of them could be potentially successful depending on the environment you're operating in.
That's
Anthony,
great, Josh.
We need to sell, Anthony. We need to sell to people? Can we take him with us? We have Josh, be the salesman.
I mean, since everything is virtual, you can take me wherever you want to go.
Exactly.
Just open a laptop and I'm there.
Do it.
Well, I was going to follow up on Josh's comments, because you're absolutely right. That's the number one response we hear from people who go through the verification process, which is that, while the plaque and the award at the end are nice and certainly valuable, the number one value is going through the process itself. So because sustainability is so cross-cutting, and it requires those conversations, and maybe requires those conversations to be had earlier than you might in a normal process, the number one response we hear is that people value those conversations. It's driving innovation. It's driving solutions, as you mentioned, cheaper alternatives, new ideas that they wouldn't have thought about, and that value that comes out of it. And I would almost say, even if you didn't care about sustainability, and we all do, but even for those people who don't, there's a huge value in just better project delivery, better project management, in having those conversations by going through a third-party system like Envision.
Yeah, well, you put a nice point on it. It wouldn't have occurred to me to make this point myself, but it's a useful communications tool, and it gives us in our resilience and sustainable design unit kind of a reason to convene folks, not just the design team, but our planning team, our financial folks, our government and community relations people, our media people, whoever it happens to be. So obviously more communication in the design process and early in the design process is always a good thing. And Envision definitely helps us facilitate that. It gives us really a reason and a necessity to reach out to folks and have these conversations. Some of them are contentious, certainly up front, but as what I say is candid but constructive. Let's get it all out on the table, but let's treat each other on a common basis as professionals and not impugn one another's motivations. I've learned a lot about let's say the more traditional engineering disciplines and their perspective on the design process by applying systems like Envision and LEAD. And I think, the more you know, the more you're able to learn from others' perspectives, the better the design you're going to deliver in the end.
Yeah. There's I'll do just a quick aside if we have the time, but there's a great professor at the Harvard Business School, Amy Edmondson, who studies teams and how teams solve problems. And she said the findings of their studies is that homogeneous teams solve problems faster, but diverse teams solve problems better.
Yeah.
And that's really what, we should all be striving for. And again, sustainability being so interdisciplinary and cross-cutting, you need a diverse team of people with a diverse range of perspectives, and they're going to solve the problem better.
Absolutely. It might make you want to tear your hair out in the meantime, but
too late.
I do for
too late.
Poor choice of words there.
Go ahead.
Oh, you guys are funny.
Yeah, I agree. It does.
Speaking of hair,
yes.
Speaking of hair, we
My
have
COVID
a
beard,
want to know what's going on with the beard.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching this on November 4th and have forgotten all about COVID because the vaccine was released, being facetious, obviously, but we're in the midst of the pandemic, and the third wave is cresting, and obviously you can see I'm in my home. I think Diane, you're in your home as well.
I'm just chilling.
Yeah, this is my office these days. I have a perfectly lovely office at 4 World Trade Center, and kind of miss it, but I don't really remember what it looks like. Should have taken a picture with me and put it on my desk at home. But so yeah, this is a COVID beard, and I have, for those of you who know me, I've always had a beard in my adult life. I'm from Vermont. You kind of need to get through the winter. But when I left the office on our last day of in-office work was March 13th. And when I left, kind of as a morale builder, I said to the team, you know what, I'm just not going to trim the beard until we're back in the office together. Wow. And it'll give you an opportunity to all make fun of me. I didn't think about WebEx and Zoom and Teams and all those things, and that people would basically be able to watch it grow day by day. But yeah, I thought, maybe this is a 6-week, maybe it's a 2-month commitment or something like that. And here we are, over 7 months later, and the proof is in the pudding.
Good. It looks good. Anthony's kind of following suit there, aren't you, Anthony?
Yeah, I've got my own much shorter COVID beard going on.
Yeah, and I haven't had a haircut since February, and I now, I can't, but I need a haircut really bad. It was started here. Now it's like, who knew it could grow this? Anyway, we're sidetracked. But I want to
mine might look that way by the time we're out of this. Who knows?
I want a before and after picture is what I want. I want you to come on at the end.
Yeah.
Before and after, it'll be great. So we do have some people who have said have some comments here, and we'll just go down the list. We have hi, Tully from Bowman Consulting. They do lead certifications, but they hope to help make Envision a standard there too. And they are thankful that we're educating them today on Port Authority. You call it the authority? Is that what you call it?
We're the PA, the authority, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, PANYNJ, whatever you want to call us.
Yeah, a bunch of names. Yeah. The port, I like it. Hi, they say they're from Orange County, California. Very insightful discussion. Always appreciate these webinars. Looking forward to being in the ESP. Well, we're looking forward to it as well. Melissa's here with us. She says you're a tremendous advocate for sustainability and Envision.
Oh, hey, Melissa.
Yeah, we've got Zach. He's
Hi, Zach.
a discussion tool for integrating sustainability and resilience into project design. It is. It's very important. And that's why we're talking about it today. And of course, our lovely Victoria.
Hi, Victoria.
Yeah. So just so much, so many people watching. Thank you very much. I know you may be eating your sandwich at this time as well as you're watching us. But as we start to wrap up.
If I were eating my sandwich, half of it would be in my beard, by the way, just to go back to that topic. But
I bet it is kind of difficult, a
little bit. I have to get Greek yogurt these days because the standard stuff just you need viscosity. Anyway,
does your child want to be like?
Oh yes.
Yeah, I bet. Especially when he's angry. He's like 2.
He uses it to enforce control over me.
Yeah, they're tough at that age at 2. All right. Well, before we go, we do have some things we want to talk about. And also, is there anything, Josh, that you wanted to reiterate or mention that we didn't mention? Any future projects or anything that did we mention all that? We talked about all that, didn't we?
Yeah, actually, I would like to make a quick pitch because we've talked about the update of our sustainable infrastructure guidelines. I haven't mentioned that we have design guidelines for climate resilience as well. We've had those since 2015. We updated them in 2018, and we will actually be doing another full step update probably in Q3 or 4 of 2021. But we're doing a minor update actually to align with the Envision criteria as well, because we're adopting it for our sustainable infrastructure guideline. It makes sense to make sure that our standard is in alignment with the documentation requirements of Envision as well. The other thing I would say is that we are also introducing a new, it's not a design guideline in the same sense that sustainable infrastructure or sustainable buildings is, but a resource to design teams, which we're calling the Green Infrastructure Design Manual. And there are a lot of great resources out there on designing green infrastructure. I mentioned our friends over at New York City DEP previously. They've got a great resource for, especially for street side and sidewalk green infrastructure. It's been a major part of their stormwater management strategy. But the Port Authority has really unique facilities, active aviation facilities, active port facilities, industrial facilities. So we're developing a standard for green infrastructure, really, as I like to say, it's pipes and plants working hand in hand, the green and gray,
Right.
working in concert to help us address our stormwater challenges, which are persistent, but to do so in a way that makes sense for our unique facility types. So we're about probably a month away from releasing that publicly. And I would say, here's my last pitch, all of this is available on the Port Authority's website, our current standards, and when we introduce the new standards, you can find them on panynj.gov. If you just actually type sustainability or environmental and panynj into Google, you'll get there. So yeah, we've got those standards up on our website. Like I said, as we introduce new standards or modify the standards, those will go up there lickety split as well. We also have information on our broader clean construction program up there as well. Our executive director, Rick Cotton, who's been immensely supportive of these programs. By the way, Anthony, you were on a panel with him actually last fall?
Yeah.
Boy, time moves strangely because it feels like it was 5 years ago. But yeah, so he's been, the really top level executives at the Port Authority have been immensely supportive of all the work that we've done. He announced our clean construction program, which is a broad set of initiatives really, which have coalesced under this one banner. And we're making all kinds of commitments to update our specifications, to introduce a construction waste management and matching tool within the organization to ensure that less material goes into landfill and less virgin material needs to be trucked into our sites. We've launched a low carbon concrete pilot project with regional academic institutions. We're still in the process of putting that together. But you can see sort of the broad slate of initiatives that we call clean construction also on our website. And once again, just type in PANYNJ and clean construction, and you should get there immediately.
That's exciting. You'll have to keep us abreast too of when you submit all that and publish all of it and have it all up there so that we can let our folks know it's there. I'd love to read all of that.
I'd be glad to.
It sounds like it's going to be a manual, like a big book, but I think it's going to be very valuable to a lot of people. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right. We have some few things we are going to pitch too. And by the way, I loved your marketing, the marketing you had for those campaigns, what you were talking about. From a marketing perspective?
Oh yeah, our marketing people will go back and watch this. So if I didn't give the websites and give the props to the executive director, I would be persona non grata. So,
I have a question on that. We get this a lot. How do you convince, or did you have to? Was it hard to convince those people, your upper executives, to be involved in this or to care about this? And what did you have a strategy, or what did it take?
Yeah, well, the answer is not really, and that's a great testament to our senior leadership. It's true. There wasn't a moment where where the light bulb turned on, and our executive management said, "Okay, this is something we should be doing as an agency." We had the board policies, and the Board of Commissioners is the governing body for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. We have 6 commissioners from New York, 6 from the state of New Jersey. And they set the policy foundation in place all the way back in 1993, updated it again in 2018. So that was there already. Under the current executive management, he's just he was an environmental lawyer at one point in his career. He's got a long history of embracing environmental issues. Obviously, an executive director has a lot of different objectives and different priorities to balance. So you always need to make a reasoned case, a business case, and ensure that you're spending money wisely. And that's what we want to do, obviously, spend public dollars well. We want to make sure that if we're spending money to invest in sustainability and resilience, we're doing it the right way. And once again, this coming full circle, Envision helps us do that. But to their credit, we didn't need to make a deep, impassioned pitch that this was important. They get it. They know it's important. Their public statements reflect that. So for us, it's just about making sure that we can make the business case and come up with a really coherent strategy that's going to be a good use of the agency's resources and our public authority.
Man, I love the sound of that. Love it. All right, so we have some things we're going to pitch. Anthony, you want to talk about our conference coming up?
Sure. So many of you may remember in March, we had a joint conference with the Harvard University's Office Program for Sustainable Infrastructure. We had great feedback from that. People were really excited about it. We're holding another virtual conference on the 18th and 19th. And the great thing there is we have a lot of the NVSPs that come up for renewal around the end of the calendar year. So if you haven't completed your education hours, this is a great way. You can do it all in one stop. You can go, we'll have 8 hours over those 2 days of education. All you need is 5 for your ENVSP. So pick and choose whichever ones are interested. And so also here we have a link for anyone that I saw someone mention about wanting to become an ENVSP or excited to become an ENVSP. There's also a virtual live workshop ENVSP training class on the 17th, the day before the 2-day conference. So anyone who wants to be an ENVSP could take that. They could get all of the ENVSP training done, and then they could go right into 2 days of conferences. It's the total immersion approach to Envision. In 3 days, you'll learn everything you need to know. So this is the link up if you'd like to register for that ENVSP training class.
Yeah, and these are really good with the Zoffness program. I always, I love to go to them, and we get hundreds of people who go because they're fantastic. Also coming up, this is mine, December 2nd, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, communications webinar. He was talking about how important communications is. Well, I'm going to talk about communications in general, how to be better at it, how to strive to be better at it. There is no perfect. And I know Jen Nanetti from HDR is going to be talking about kind of what we talked about here, Josh, about the value of Envision and how to communicate that to your agency and to others so that they embrace it, start using it, and we can make our project sustainable and resilient and equitable. So that is on December 2nd. Later this month, real quick, aggregate construction technology. I think I spelled that right. That is November 24th, right before Thanksgiving. So yeah, we're going to load you up in November, and then in December we get to chill. A lot of December is chill time around here. I mean, we're going to work, but we don't have a lot, going on in December, so we can all enjoy the holidays. But that is pretty much
no Christmas Eve webinars.
Yeah.
I think some people might want an excuse.
This is really so good.
Very important.
Maybe a day after webinar to get
Boxing Day. Yeah.
Funny. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us today, Josh. Really been interesting. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. This is going to be recorded, and you can watch it.
Wait, it's going to be recorded?
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. It'll be out there for people to watch. If they missed it live, it is out there. But you guys did a wonderful job talking about all of this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Enjoyed it. Thank you.